Every 10 years, for exactly 7 days, the town of Lensbend disappears. No calls go through, no satellites pick up a single light on its streets, no car crosses the one bridge that connects it to the rest of the county, because for those 7 days, the bridge gates lower, the phone lines go dead, and every road reads on a map as simply woods. Aerial photographs taken from just outside the tree line show nothing but rooftops and stillness. Weather radar shows a clear sky, cycle after cycle, with nothing on it to explain a town going silent. Then, on the 8th day, the town is back. Same porch lights, same people, walking the same streets, going about their week like nothing happened at all. Same laundry on the same lines, as if the whole town had simply held its breath rather than vanished. This has happened 6 times, and each cycle has come with its own explanation, offered just convincingly enough to hold until the next one. The earliest blackouts got blamed on storms too severe for the roads, even though no weather service ever logged them. Later ones got blamed on a fire at the relay tower that no fire department was ever called to fight, and on a flu quarantine no doctor outside town ever confirmed. Ask anyone in Lensbend what actually occurs during the dark week, though, and the explanations stop. They'll tell you they don't remember, or they'll change the subject entirely. What kind of town trains its own people not to ask a question that big? That question is what brought journalist Nora Whitlock home. She grew up in Lensbend. She left at 17, the same year her mother, Grace Whitlock, drove into town on a routine land survey and never drove back out. Grace vanished during the 5th blackout. The town reappeared 8 days later. Same as always. Grace didn't. Growing up, Nora heard every theory the county could invent to explain the week her town went quiet. A chemical spill nobody would admit to at the old mill. A sect that didn't want outsiders watching its rights. Even a retired trooper's half-joking claim about the Air Force and the woods out past the bridge. She filed all of it away as small-town noise. She never expected to be the one who finally tested any of it against the facts. 10 years after that, almost to the week, the 7th blackout is due. Nora has spent her career writing about towns that hide things. She has never written about the one that raised her. Until now. The paper trail starts small. County records show Lensbend was founded in 1926 by roughly 900 people, mostly mill workers who'd been blacklisted from every other company town in the region. They didn't buy the land. They leased it for 99 years from a timber outfit called Kestrel Land and Company, under a contract with one strange clause. Every 10 years, on the founding date, Kestrel retains the right to send an inspector and formally count the town. If the population and its buildings hold up, the lease renews. If they don't, the land reverts. Folded into the back of the original document, Nora finds an appendix listing all 900 original leaseholders by name and household, as if Kestrel had wanted no room for ambiguity about exactly who it was agreeing to count. Nora finds the town's unofficial historian first, a quiet man named Silas Boone, who keeps the ledgers in a back room of the old Grange Hall like they're scripture. He shows her 60 years of records without being asked twice. Deeds, tax rolls, hand-copied inspector reports the county itself no longer has on file. Every 10 years, an inspection date comes due. Every 10 years, right before it, the town goes dark. Silas says it plainly. Nobody in Lensbend has been formally counted since 1966. He also shows her something odder, a maintenance log noting which houses get their paint touched up and which get deliberately left to peel, as though someone has spent decades curating exactly how abandoned the town is supposed to look from the road. Nora also finds Dr. Renata Cole, an atmospheric researcher 2 counties over, who has been quietly logging Lensbend's blackouts for 2 decades, purely out of professional stubbornness. Cole pulls up 18 years of infrared passes. During ordinary weeks, the town warms and cools with the sun, the way any inhabited place does. During the blackout week, the heat signatures don't disappear the way a truly empty town's would. They just shrink, clustering into a fraction of the buildings that glow the rest of the year. Something wasn't leaving. Something was hiding in place. Cole's radio spectrum logs tell a stranger story still. The relay tower doesn't fail randomly during a blackout. It drops off the air in the same 2-minute window, cycle after cycle, like a switch being thrown and not a storm knocking down a line. No natural event lines up with any of the dates. The blackout isn't weather, it's scheduled. Here's where it's worth pausing the video and guessing. A town that goes fully dark on a fixed 10-year clock, right before a legal headcount it can't afford to fail. What is it actually hiding? The town gives Nora almost nothing. Doors stay closed. People are polite and say little. One woman leans through a cracked door just long enough to tell her to check under the water tower before it's gone, then apologizes for saying anything and shuts the door for good. Nora spends a day getting a plumber's cousin to walk her through the tower's inspection hatch and finds nothing but rust and pigeons. One more corner of Larkin's Bend that looks like a secret from a distance and turns out to be nothing at all up close. Only Silas keeps talking, feeding her documents a little at a time. He seems almost eager for her to find things, which she notices and files away and doesn't yet understand. What she finds first is the ledger of names. Every household in town keeps a private list, quietly updated, of who currently lives there. Nora cross-checks it against everything else she can get her hands on. Water bills, the handful of properties still paying county tax, obituaries in a newspaper archive 2 towns over that Larkin's Bend never bothered subscribing to itself. Every source gives her the same shrinking number. She compares Silas's current ledger to the last public census on file from 1966. The numbers don't match. Not close. The 1966 census counted just under 900 residents. Silas's private ledger, kept current, lists 41. Larkin's Bend isn't hiding secrets during the dark week. Larkin's Bend is hiding its own size. The math is brutal and simple. A town built for 900, leased on the promise of 900, has spent 60 years quietly emptying out. Deaths, kids who left and didn't come back, whole streets gone to weeds behind boarded windows. If Kestrel's heirs ever sent a real inspector and got a real count, the lease would void instantly. So instead of failing the count, the town has spent 6 decades making sure no count ever happens. Cut the bridge, kill the relay tower, draw the blackout curtains. Let the satellites see an empty town, because an empty town that can't be reached reads as abandoned, not as broken contract. Each cycle sharpened the method a little more than the last. The water tower rumor, the peeling paint, the storm excuses, and the fire that never was. All of it built to give anyone who came looking a story that dead-ended before it reached the truth. From the outside, it looks like folklore. From the inside, it's a workaround repeated on a clock for as long as anyone can remember. That's the turn. It isn't a haunting. It isn't a miracle. It's a town of 41 people protecting a paper agreement built for 900, one blackout at a time. And that reframes everything about Nora's mother. Grace Whitlock didn't vanish during the 5th blackout by accident. She was Kestrel's own surveyor, sent to walk the property lines 10 years ago, right on schedule. Nora finds Grace's unfiled field notes in a box in Silas's back room. Measurements, a rough sketch of the town's real footprint, a running tally that gets more urgent line by line. The last page stops mid-sentence, the day the bridge closed under her. For a few days, Nora lets herself believe the worst. Augustine Merrow has run every blackout for decades. He was already in charge in 1966. If anyone had reason to make an inspector disappear rather than let her file a report that would end the lease, it was him. Nora walks into her interview with him half convinced she's about to accuse a killer. So did the town take her? Or did she stay? Nora gets her answer from Augustine Merrow, the last living descendant of the family that signed the original lease, and the person who has quietly run every blackout since. Merrow is old, direct, and tired of the secret in a way the younger residents aren't yet. He tells Nora the truth without much ceremony and without defending himself for what she'd started to suspect. Grace found the real number in 1966 the same way Nora just did. She had every reason to file her report and end the town's lease on the spot. Instead, she put down her clipboard, picked up a hammer, and stayed to help fix the actual problem instead of hiding it again. For 10 years, quietly, Grace has been doing something no blackout ever accomplished. She has been finding people, distant relatives of founding families, people priced out of everywhere else, people willing to move somewhere nobody officially checks on, and bringing them back to Larkin's Bend. Not to fake a headcount, to rebuild a real one. Slowly, off any public record Kestrel's lawyers would think to check, the town has grown from 41 to just over 300. She lived through the sixth blackout herself, running it from the inside instead of hiding from it, and the ledger grew by another 60 names in the 2 years after that cycle alone. It's still not 900. It might not be enough. But for the first time since 1966, it might be close enough to survive an inspection that actually happens. Which is the decision facing the town the week Nora comes home. Kestrel's modern-day attorney, a methodical man named Warren Doss, has finally noticed 60 years of missed inspections and is done accepting the town was unreachable as an answer. An insurance audit flagged the gap first, then a satellite image that didn't match the county's abandonment filing. He has scheduled this year's count himself, in person, and made it clear he's coming whether the bridge is up or not. The town can do what it's always done and vanish again, buying 10 more years on borrowed time. Or it can do something it has never done in 6 cycles. Leave the lights on, open the bridge, and let itself be seen. That vote happens in the Grange Hall, 3 nights before the blackout is supposed to start, and Nora is in the room for it. Nora lays out both options plainly. The arguments split along predictable lines. Older residents remember families who left during past blackout windows and simply never made it back before the bridge reopened, gaps Silas's ledger records without ever explaining them. Younger residents argue that borrowed time is still just time, and that the town has been dying by inches every cycle it chose to hide instead of grow. Silas says nothing through all of it, which Nora notices again. The town votes, narrowly, to stay lit. For the first time since the Johnson administration, Larkin's Bend is choosing to be counted instead of hidden. Warren Doss arrives on the scheduled date, expecting an empty town, the way 6 previous inspectors quietly gave up, expecting the same. Instead, he finds streets full of people, houses with lights on, and a mayor's office that hands him a real, current, cooperative census before he's finished parking his car. He walks the properties himself and checks utility hookups against the rolls, finding them matching for the first time in 60 years. He counts 311 residents, functioning infrastructure, and a town that, on paper, looks nothing like the ghost story his firm's file described. It isn't 900, but it's enough, under the original contract's minimum viability language, to renew the lease clean, and for the first time in the agreement's 100-year history, permanently, with no further 10-year audits required. The dark week doesn't happen. Larkin's Bend stays lit through the exact 7 days it was supposed to vanish, and nothing about that feels anticlimactic to the people who lived through 6 versions of the alternative. Here's the twist waiting underneath the win. Nora goes back to Silas afterward, mostly to thank him, and instead gets the piece he'd been holding back the whole time. It was Silas who tipped off Kestrel's firm 2 years ago, anonymously, a single letter with just enough detail to force this inspection onto the calendar on purpose. He'd watched Grace spend a decade quietly rebuilding the town and decided the hiding had to end on someone's terms, deliberately, instead of collapsing on its own eventually. He'd also been the one who called the newspaper Nora worked for and made sure her editor handed her this specific assignment. He knew exactly whose daughter he was inviting home, and there's one number left that Nora hadn't thought to check. When Warren Doss ran his final count against the town's utility and property rolls, one name on that list had never actually been removed in the 10 years since she left for good. Nora Whitlock. Still listed, still technically a resident of Larkin's Bend, the whole time she thought she'd gotten out. She hadn't gotten out. She'd just been one of the numbers waiting to come home and make itself real again. Every 10 years, for exactly 7 days, the town of Larkin's Bend used to disappear. This year, it didn't have to. It just had to stop hiding how many people were actually left and let one more name, quietly already on the books, finally show up in person to be counted.